Welcome back to Competitive Pokémon Explained, the series where I explain certain things about competitive singles or doubles that may not be so obvious to newer spectators or players. Today we are discussing generational gimmicks, specifically the reasons why or why not these formats are banned across multiple formats. To clarify, a generational gimmick is a community term for a new major mechanic introduced in one generation that then proceeds to not be present in future generations. Things like Dynamax and Z-moves are examples of this, as they were only present for the generation they were introduced in. Mega Evolutions are an exception to this, but it only lasted one extra generation, so it still counts. Now, I won't be discussing why a generational gimmick was banned in each format in particular, as there are way too many formats in Smogon that I can't give a reason for each of them. I will mostly be giving a broad explanation on why these mechanics might be banned, along with a few examples of formats that banned them notably, but just keep in mind the reason may be different per format. Believe me, if I had to go through each format specifically, this video would end up being 3 hours long. Also, I will not be discussing VGC doubles, as none of the generational gimmicks are banned in these formats. While it can probably be chalked up to Game Freak wanting their new mechanics to be shown off in official competitions, another potential reason for the lack of bans is because of the amount of Pokemon present in each battle. Smogon singles is often a lot more susceptible to these overpowered mechanics over centralizing the meta due to the fact that A, all generational gimmicks can only be used by one Pokemon per team, and B, each fight is a 1v1 instead of a 2v2 in Smogon singles. It is much easier to gain an advantage against a single opponent rather than two. At least, that's the simplest way I can explain it. Before we begin though, subscribe if you like what you see, and comment down below on what you'd like to see next. With all that preamble out of the way, let's begin with... So Mega Evolution is kinda wonky, as the mechanic itself is never banned, but in certain situations it is banned. There does not exist a Mega Evolution clause in any tier of Smogon as far as I know, and in most formats that don't exist within a normal ladder. So the mechanic itself is never banned outright. However, there do exist separate tiering for Pokemon in their Mega forms, essentially banning Pokemon from Mega Evolution in certain tiers. For example, in Generation 6, normal Absol is in RU, whereas Mega Absol is in UU. This means that Absol is unable to Mega Evolve in RU, but can do so in UU and above. The reason for this is because Mega Pokemon essentially act as their own Pokemon in and of themselves, since they have different stats, sometimes typing, and more. And the only thing that connects Mega Pokemon from their normal counterparts is the Mega Stones. So if a Mega Pokemon is in a higher tier than their unevolved counterpart, the Mega Stone associated with them is just banned in the tier or tiers below where the Mega form is placed. This decision aligns with past decisions made by Smogon, as different forms of certain Pokemon have had different tiering for each form, such as Deoxys Attack being in a higher tier than Deoxys Defense. If these form changes can have their own tiers, then so should Mega forms. Mega Evolution itself isn't banned, mostly because it doesn't affect every single Pokemon, as only a few Pokemon have ever received a Mega form. And not every Mega form is created equal, as for every Mega Gengar with Shadow Tag, there is a Mega Banette or Ampharos. It wouldn't make sense to ban those forms, as they aren't the unhealthy or over-centralizing ones. So Mega Evolution itself isn't banned, while certain Megas are, at least in certain tiers. While Z-moves themselves are never banned in official metagames, nor in the popular other metagames that I found, there were both examples of certain Z-moves being banned, as well as heavy discussion from the community banning Z-moves, or at the very least, many people voicing their disdain for the mechanic in general. From what I could gather, there were many reasons why Z-moves were hated, but the main two was there was no real way to stop the other Pokemon from using a Z-move, and once a Z-move was used, it was often enough to one-hit KO most Pokemon. Since you couldn't remove the opponent's Z-Crystal through moves like Trick or Knockoff, nor could you fully mitigate the damage through Protect, and Protect was pretty rare to see on most Pokemon in Smogon anyways, there was very little you could do other than to take the damage and move on. However, the damage from a single Z-move was usually enough to knock out most Pokemon, even the tankiest amongst them, meaning it could often turn into a free Crush This Guy's Balls card that you could use at any moment. Now with all that being said, it wasn't banned, but side note, I do think that Z-moves being banned is a testament to the credibility of Smogon's bans, and that they don't just ban things they don't like. Obviously, a lot of people don't like Z-moves on the internet, but it wasn't banned despite that. But why wasn't it banned at all? Compared to the generational gimmick we will see next, it mostly did just function as a kill this one guy button, and not much else. Sure, there wasn't a whole lot to using it, nor playing against it, however, it only ever has an impact one single time, and that's it. Plus, it never over-centralized the meta, seeing as there were a lot of Pokemon sets that don't need a Z-Crystal seeing a lot of success in OU and beyond. Okay, to be honest, The main reason why I made this video is because of Dynamax. The Dynamax ban is probably the only generational gimmick ban that was widespread enough to reach a normal OU ladder. The ban was simple. No Pokemon could use Dynamax ever, even in Ubers. Yes, even in a tier where the most things banned from OU go. It was too powerful for this tier as well. There were many reasons why Dynamax was banned. First off, it gave an insane power boost to a Pokemon for 3 whole turns. Each attack a Pokemon did was almost like a Z move in power, except you got this power boost 3 times. Plus, each time a Dynamax Pokemon attacks, there's also a guaranteed secondary effect that occurs, depending on the type of move used. Then there was the bulk it granted to Pokemon, since it doubled the health of Pokemon instantly, although temporarily. This meant that attacks that would normally deal crazy damage or even one-hit KO Pokemon might suddenly stop working once you press the Dynamax button. It also does not require an item slot to use, unlike the previous 2 mechanics. Before, if you wanted to use a generational gimmick, you had to give up an item slot for it. An item slot which could also be used for other powerful items like Choice Band or Citrus Berries. Now with Dynamax, you can power up and still have an item of your choosing. Finally, pretty much any Pokemon can Dynamax at any given moment. Before, if the Pokemon you wanted to use the gimmick fainted at a bad time, you would have lost your opportunity to take advantage of that boost in power. Now if your main Dynamax user fainted, you can still Dynamax another Pokemon and gain similar effects. And finally, Dynamax Pokemon have a bunch of immunities to certain moves, usually status moves, on top of everything they can already do. It was just too much for the metagame to handle and over-centralized everything too hard. Thus, it was eventually banned. Finally, we have our newest gimmick, and while it isn't banned in the official ladder, there are a multitude of other metagames where it's banned, and a ton of discussion on whether or not it deserves to be banned, albeit this discussion was mostly early on in the gimmick's lifetime. Many other metagames ban terrestrialization because oftentimes, the changes that these metagames make to the gameplay often tip the balance of terrestrialization towards being unhealthy, or the changes make things broken in the first place, and terrestrialization makes it even more broken than before. For example, almost any ability banned terrestrialization, because being able to customize both your Pokemon's type and ability led to some very unfunny combos like Levitate Terra Electric Pokemon, or Adaptability Terra Normal Noivern with Boom Burst. Savons also bans terrestrialization for a similar reason, as the mechanic boosted Pokemon that were already stupidly powerful in the format, like Urshifu Rapid Strike, as well as adding yet another super powerful tool to the already wide array of tools that the player has when playing this tier. It was just too much and was banned after a suspect test. With all that though, why isn't terrestrialization banned at a standard OU ladder? The main reason is because terrestrialization isn't broken enough in the normal ladder for it to require a ban or suspect test. While in many other metagames, it adds on top of the already broken nature of the formats, in the standard game, it really just adds another level of prediction in mind games, as well as a good power boost to some Pokemon. And a bad Terra can lead to fainted Pokemon or game losses, like Dynamaxing, where only getting value out of Dynamaxing one whole time was enough to tip the scales way in your favor. It just wasn't enough to warrant any action and wasn't banned. In the end though, while the only fully banned generational gimmick was Dynamaxing, these generational gimmicks do have a long history of bans in Smogon. While yes, these gimmicks can end up increasing the overall power level of the generations they're in, and that can be a bad thing as seen with Dynamaxing, they do provide a breath of fresh air for players that have been playing Pokemon for a long time. The franchise is almost 30 years old at this point, and we're 9 generations in. Not changing out the formula from what it was 28 years ago would have led to these games feeling stale, and so they did need these gimmicks to be made to spice things up. And I think it's a testament that these mechanics, besides Dynamaxing, weren't so powerful that they upended the competitive integrity of Pokemon, even if it is just a silly kids game. But with that, thank you all so much for watching this past year. It's been a blast making videos for you all. I seriously cannot thank you enough for all the support that you've been giving me, and I hope to make a lot more videos in the next few years. Here's to years to come, and I'll see you all in the next one.